Hey y'all, Bernie with Savant, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the different options to install these power modules. This right here is a 20 amp, 120 volt power module that controls two circuits in the home. And so the first option that we like to do is what we call the same panel method, right? Where you are basically using the panel, and if it has spaces already in that panel, we can install these power modules just like this one right here within that panel that is already kind of full but still has some spaces. Now, what if you have a panel that is completely full of circuit breakers? Well, we can do the sub-panel method right here, where we basically just install a panel. This was a 24 space, about $89 Siemens panel from Home Depot. And what we do basically is we get all of these breakers here. Since it's full, we are able to run the outputs, right, of the breaker into the inputs of these power modules over here. And then the output of the power modules goes back over here and goes and ties into the home run that goes towards the load, right? So those are two different options of installing these power modules. And then also, what if you need some space, right? Another thing that we can recommend sometimes is, of course, if it allows for it, you can use tandem breakers. Those are breakers that are a little bit smaller than the normal size breakers that take up less spaces within the subpanel or within the panel. And what we then do is basically remove the normal size breakers, install tandem breakers, and that opens up some spaces as well. Now, to dive a little bit deeper, you can see right here, this power module, this is the same panel method where we had available spaces, and so we can install the power module into it, where basically right here, this is the 30 amp breaker that is feeding this 30 amp power module. This is a 30 amp 240 volt breaker feeding this 30 amp 240 volt power module. This is for the garage dryer. And basically what we're doing is we are taking the breaker, and you're going to take that output from the breaker and it goes into the input of this power module, and then the output of the power module is going to be tied into what is the home run that goes towards the garage dryer. And there's different options how to do this. Of course, you want to follow code. For this, you can use Wagos, or you can just do the regular wire nuts, just as long as you do that correctly. Now, since this is a smaller panel, this is technically a 12 space panel. What we do, right, whenever you have a 42 space panel, when they're bigger, I'm going to show a picture right now of a different method right there that includes basically breaker, breaker, module, breaker, breaker, module, and you can go all the way down to as many modules as you need. Now, for the sub-panel method, what we're going to do is basically install the panel right next to it, where the L1 and L2, the bus bars in this panel, are being energized by this 20 amp breaker right here that is tied into this 20 amp breaker over here, double pole, right? So we're taking L1 and L2 from this breaker, bringing it over here, and then we're feeding basically L1 and L2 on this side. It's only to power up the power modules. It's not going to be taking any additional power. It's only going to be about 3 watts per power module. And then as always, you can always install that current track module down here, where we have the CTs right here across the feeds. It's behind the panel. Nevertheless, that's what we're measuring right there. So those are the two methods. That's the same panel method as well as the sub-panel method. And if y'all have any questions, feel free to reach out.